Does life feel too overfull for art making? What if just 5 to 10 minutes with a paintbrush could calm your mind and raise your spirit? This week, I'm picking up a paintbrush and letting go of perfection. Join me to create beauty even in the messy moments. Welcome to Better with Art. I'm Melinda, and I'm here to encourage you to reclaim your creativity and practice creative self-care with small art prompts with inexpensive and easily accessible materials. Before we get started with the watercolor, I'm going to show you a little bit of watercolor technique. I'm a little rusty, and you'll notice that as we go through today's project. As usual, I'm using a water spray bottle to activate my paints. I'm starting with a circle to dry to demonstrate the wet on dry technique. Next will be a circle for wet on wet. I'm using an inexpensive set of 8 praying watercolors you can buy on Amazon, and I will link to them in the description. I put down just water and am adding pigment. When you just drop color in, the color won't go beyond the boundary of the circle you created with just water. I'm playing with different amounts, deepening the color, and you can see how the color spreads through the water. If you've been around a while, you know that's one of my favorite things about working with watercolors. And next I will drop in some red, adding another color. Well, even adding one color, it's unpredictable. You cannot know for sure exactly how the pigment will spread through the water, through the other color. And even after it spreads with the initial application, it will continue to look different as it dries. Why stop at one color when you can add 2? The unpredictability of watercolor is one of the ways it helps us let go of perfection in our creative self-care art making. I am trying to be careful to try to avoid my blue mixing much with my orange. I don't want to create mud right now. Creating muddy colors can be useful, but it's not what I have in mind right now. I have done videos where using complementary colors, orange and blue, red and green, purple and yellow, creates a gorgeous autumn color palette as the complementary colors mute each other when they're mixed. Another circle, and this one is intended to show how you can lift pigment with a clean brush. I didn't do so great. My brush was a little too wet, but it shows you the concept. It's just not usually this variegated. As I introduced extra clean water, it did spread through the pigment, like the pigment spreads through the water. It's an interesting effect, but you can get cleaner edges. I do like this purple I created. You can also use a clean paper towel, or in this case, a shop towel, to lift pigment and extra paint. Speaking of extra, my original wet on wet circle definitely has excess water and paint. And also, because nothing in my house is level, it is pooling on one side. So I did tip it to spread it a little more. The next demonstration is dry on dry, but I did have a little too much water on my brush. But you can better see the technique, the effect as I go. And I apologize for all the times my hand gets in the way. Next, it's time for the wet on dry I mentioned. Unfortunately, the circle was still a little damp, so you don't really get the effect of it here, but later in the video, I will demonstrate it again. As far as this week's actual art, we are back to another no rules, no pressure, intuitive art session with botanicals. And I love that first petal. With the round brush, when you press it against the paper, you get a larger stroke and you get a finer one with the tip. I would have been further ahead, not having all of my petals touch so much, with so much water on my brush as that time. Sort of lost control of my petal there too. Oranges and purples can create some mud, and you will notice with this session on this page that my colors do get a little muddy using the colors already in my watercolor lid mixing tray. That's another thing I love about watercolors is when you have mixed colors and they dry, they can be reactivated with water. This flower started with such promise and went sideways, but it's still interesting. And as I always say, we shouldn't judge our art journal art, our better with art, our creative self-care art, the same way we would judge something professional or for others to view. Creative self-care art making is very much process over product. We do it for the process, for how the process helps us feel, improves our mood, improves our health. Today's small art isn't therapeutic art focused on working through anything in particular. It, as so many of my Better with Art projects, is about the pleasure of creating, of learning, of experimenting, of just letting go of everything else to lay down, in this case, watercolor. Even when it's not looking a way that you love in the moment, it still has value. As you've probably noticed, I have been using the wet on wet technique, and I have speeded up the video because I spent more time enjoying my watercolor playtime than you may want to watch it, and I also respect your time. Better with Art art projects are intended to not only be done with inexpensive and easily accessible materials, but also be accessible in a couple of senses. If you don't have a lot of spare time, you can still benefit from Better with Art art prompts because you don't need a lot of time to practice meaningful creative self-care. You will also see that I share art that is not my best, because that's not what creative self-care art making is about. That's not what Better with Art is about. I can't encourage you to make imperfect art if I only show you my best art. Something useful when drawing plants is a plant. Even if you're not aiming for realism, even if you don't want your plants to look like something you would ever see on Earth, it's useful to be able to look at the natural lines to encourage your own organic shapes. Baby's breath is not something I typically have around, but I happened to have a bouquet in my studio. And of the shapes of the flowers in the vase, this seemed to be the one that would be the easiest and most useful to work from in this context. As you can see, I am using a much finer brush for much finer lines. This is a rigger brush, which also has longer bristles. I've also heard them called liner brushes. I got back out one of my inexpensive watercolor brushes to add my blossoms. I started with yellows and orange, and decided to use my favorite scissors to cut off that stray protruding bristle. I ended up changing my approach from working on each branch with multiple colors to putting down similar colors on multiple branches, and I didn't like how that turned out as well. But again, it is my creative self-care art making. As well as being relaxing, I also learn. Not too long ago, I did a Better with Art video about drawing nature when we can't be in nature, and how that can be perfectly done from books. There are so many gorgeous plant books in your local library. In this video, I got to use not a library book, but one I got for my birthday. I used the stem as inspiration. I went off on my own for the leaves, and that definitely had mixed results. This wet-on-wet pair in particular just wouldn't do what I wanted them to, and that's okay. Part of better with art making is letting go of perfection, letting go of expectations, and embracing the imperfection, embracing the not knowing, approaching the unknown with curiosity and a willingness to explore. Getting comfortable with all that in our art can translate to our lives. Not planning our marks can build trust in our own instincts and intuition. Learning to accept not knowing how things will turn out, and willingness to find the beauty when things don't go as planned or as we'd like, are important tools to move from our page to our mind, our heart, our soul. This week's art making is another activity that promotes mindfulness, allowing us to be present in this moment, finding creative flow, where all the noise quiets, the noise from outside and the noise within. It reduces our anxious overthinking and allows our minds to find solutions for things that we may be thinking too much about, so much that we're missing something vital. Allow yourself to get lost in the process of creating your unique and as fantastical as you want them to be botanicals. There are some areas of these I really love, and others not so much. Kind of like life. And that's okay. I did get back out my rigger brush, and here you can see how wet on dry should work, because this page is actually dry. Then I got really into creating leaf shapes. Take some time to intuitively paint your own plants this week. Taking time to make art is not a waste of time. It's great for our mental health, regardless of how things turn out, especially if you can let go of your concept of perfection or good art. It's about the process. Life is full of pressure to perform and meet arbitrary standards. Give yourself freedom from that in your creative self-care art making time. If you found value in this encouragement to let go of perfection and take time to practice creative self-care with art making, give me a like. I turned off the camera to chat with my daughter, but kept playing with leaves and blending color, giving you a close-up of some of my favorite bits. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss upcoming creative self-care content, and help me reach more people with the message that taking time to make art is not a waste of time, because we are better with art.